Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frayne. I'm the host. The show is also known as PWD Allies Podcast. Please check out the podcast where you find it best suited for you. And today I have Dan Davies, MLA Dan Davies from Peace River North. Dan is the Shadow Minister for Social Development and Poverty Reduction in the province of British Columbia. Once again, I thank you very much, Dan, for coming back onto the show, and it's always a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Appreciate it. And they've also added education, Shadow Minister for Education as well on top of all that. So,
oh wow, wow.
They're going to have you working every ministry pretty soon.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's some days as a constituent MLA, you pretty much do work in every single ministry at the local office. So, yeah. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah.
It's been quite toasty warm here on the South Coast. We definitely had that heat wave going, and the humidity makes it feel uncomfortable at times. But so far today is actually a nice little breeze blowing, so it's nice.
Yeah, we're the same up here in northern BC. It's expected mid-30s today, so it's going to be pretty toasty.
Yeah. It's definitely. The weather patterns changed a lot with a lot more forest fires that are going on throughout British Columbia, and so I really remind people that campfire ban is actually in effect in British Columbia. So there's no campfires. You can't go and have a little marshmallow roast or anything like that. That's banned. So yeah, everything's tinder dry in BC. It's really bad, actually.
Well, you were here. It was about a year ago. It was May of 2023, and the fire season was bad at that point too. I remember.
Yeah, well, we've just come out of course, just recently, Fort Nelson, the town of Fort Nelson being evacuated into Fort St. John. That's a small town, 3,500 people. But I was talking to some folks up there again, and it sounds like in the last couple of days, a few of those fires have sparked up. So, yeah, it's we definitely need some rain, and like you said, Brent, be vigilant. Don't throw cigarette butts out. Don't have campfires. Even hot exhaust pipes is enough to start a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, I was watching the local news this morning, and it's so devastating to hear about the hospital closures in the emergency up in Fort St. John, up in your area. I mean, so for days in a row, like. I don't understand.
We just finished the fifth overnight closure of our emergency. It's insane. Considering our hospital in Fort St. John is the regional hospital, so it kind of looks after a big chunk of the Northeast.
I guess you're not allowed to get sick. That's
what I say. Everyone be careful. Don't get sick, or make sure you're somewhere where there's a hospital that's open if you are going to get sick.
Yeah, and you're having to commute to like other communities, and whether you don't have accessible transit or you don't have a vehicle, there's going to be serious consequences for people's well-being for sure.
Yeah, no, it is.
With the provincial budget, kind of going back in a little bit of the time machine, back to the BC budget in British Columbia. As we know, persons with disabilities, there was no mention at all, $0 in the BC budget this year. With the cost of living skyrocketing, people are having to cut services. Like myself, I had to turn off my service provider unfortunately, because cost of living. I mean, you have to buy all your basic necessities. Buy some new clothing if you need to. I mean, it gets pretty worn out after a while, and all your toiletries. I mean, just anything in general. And I'm sure so many people in BC and across the country are suffering so bad. And
just the cost of groceries.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a head of lettuce. I mean, $5, $4.99, and you have to hope that it's fresh too, because it's not. You throw it out, and you have to commute so far to a grocery store. Well, I mean, go and buy another one. I mean, yeah, it's just the basics, and it's really unfortunate that the government just couldn't figure out how to just do a rate increase. But they say, well, we gave an increase last year only to some, though. They didn't give it to people in individuals living in BC under BC housing umbrella. Only for the PWD who pay market rent. They got the 125 last year. Yeah, but it just seems like a trend, though, Dan. Like it's like a go a year, skip a year, go a year, skip a year. And my landlord just reminded me just the other day that, well, Brent, I mean, I gave you and Sonia a rent increase. Why didn't the government give you an increase? I mean, to offset that cost. And I said, well, we have to cut it out
that way.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted to kind of focus on today, though, is this idea that the existing PWD legislation it's founded on cherry picking. And we kind of talked about that a little bit the last time you were here, Dan, is this idea that the PWD income assistance, it's all based on PWD versus PWD, and so I kind of wanted to talk about PWD clawbacks and pink unicorns, and I'm going to introduce a new idea today, Schrödinger's cat. I don't know if you're familiar with Schrödinger's cat, but we'll get into it. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, so I'll go through it quickly. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is that I've mentioned before. I'm kind of an idealistic guy, right? Like I grew up, for example, loving I used to watch at age 11 and 12. I used to love watching like the old reruns of Perry Mason. The lawyer, and having the good guy lawyer always win and all that kind of stuff, and they'd put their hand on the Bible. It's like, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, right? And I mean, I love the idea of righteousness, and even before I was a Christian, I mean, the idea of being righteous and justice, and like I said, call me stupid, but I love idealism, and it kind of bugs me. It kind of bugs me that our governments don't strive for more idealism. I mean, I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't know. It shouldn't be. And again, not to pick on David Eby, because I know he's a lawyer too. And so,
but it's fun to pick on him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like he was the now I'm gonna get a brain fart now. The Attorney General.
Yeah, Attorney General of Housing
starting in 2017, right? So he should know all about truth and justice and righteousness and all of that.
He's also housing minister too.
And yet they have these clawbacks where you take a pension like my survivor's pension. It's been clawed back for almost 11 years now as unearned income. And if you look up a pension in any dictionary, it's like a pension is a protected income. A pension is a protected income. And the way the PWD assistance is set up now, they're saying, well, so what's it, a protected income? We'll claw it back. And I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me that you're taking something that's, like they like to use the term targeted wraparound support too, right? Like our income assistance programs are providing targeted wraparound supports. Well, you're just invalidating a perfectly good wraparound support, which is my pension, and saying it doesn't matter, and so I've tried three different human rights tribunals, and every time I try these tribunals, or I've even when David Eby was the Attorney General, I would actually write him direct emails. Like I would actually make him the primary person that I'd be writing to, and I'd say like, please, can you please acknowledge the truth of a pension? And like it would be just crickets, and I probably sent him, I don't know, and ever since he was the Attorney General, it was like I sent him maybe 24 emails or something, and it was crickets all the time. And it's like, you're not going to acknowledge the truth. And the same thing with the human rights tribunals too. It's like, well, we'll just, it's fine that they're clawing back a pension as under Nickham, and it's like, well, you're not acknowledging the truth. You're just throwing out the truth and saying the truth doesn't matter about a pension, and it's fine. And so that's the first thing I wanted to mention. And then, well, I'll get to the Schrödinger's cat in a second, but I just want to get your initial reaction to that.
Yeah, and absolutely, I can't disagree with you because you speak the truth, and I think when it's a sign of disempowering the poorest people.
Yeah.
It's instead of empowering and lifting people up to in all aspects, our system right now, and you talk about the clawbacks, and right now lots of talk about the federal program that's coming. Is there going to be a clawback on the provincial piece? When we start playing these tug of wars between different programs, it really is a structural discrimination and social exclusion about it that keeps people trapped in poverty. And we need to be moving away into something where, how do we work together to empower people that are in poverty and lift them up and give them those opportunities to contribute. And there is an economic value to doing that.
Yeah.
It is. I really think we need to look at different models around the world and how we can do that. Now, the bigger piece, of the picture, and I believe truly how we can combat this, and I think this is why presently the NDP hasn't been able to do it, is they don't have the money.
Yeah.
And it's two pieces. A, they don't have the money because they've been spending it silly way and not doing it properly, but they haven't also grown the economy. And if you combine those two things in governments around the world and across time, the first things that usually get cut are the social services. And until we can, in the province of British Columbia, turn that around, the NDP is going to be facing more significant challenges on how are they going to be able to do these things. And again, that's, you emailed the then minister, now premier, and that's why you were hearing crickets, because he didn't have the answer. Yeah. We have seen the economy in British Columbia shrink. In fact, it's the slowest economy right now in Canada. Well, we cannot support any of our social services properly if we don't have an economy that's functioning. And I think that is, one of the, I'll use the word a travesty that, British Columbia, we are so blessed with the opportunities here in this province to invest in our resource sectors, to invest in tourism, to invest in, technology, people, those opportunities are here in the province, but we're not doing that. And the government presently is not doing that. So until we build this strong economy, it's very hard for the government to lift people and lift communities out of poverty. So that is what we really need to be looking at, how to do that, and then develop a plan, to empower, whether it's persons with disabilities, or people that are just in within the social development programs.
There was another part that I wanted to throw in there really quickly. I just wanted your observation and basically your comment on it, Dan. Just recently, and Neil knows about this because I've talked about it on a previous podcast. So I had a conversation with BC Housing. I phoned them up, and I mentioned to them that because a lot of PWD are paying high market rent, and they want to get into BC Housing so that they can pay cheaper accommodation, right? Rent geared to income, or RGI, however you want to word it as. And so the stipulation, the guidelines, and they said the policy is that any PWD who needs to be into housing, under their umbrella, which is extended into co-op housing and non-for-profit, for-profit, they said there's a whole broad range across their network. However, if they're just friends or roommates, they do not qualify. You have to be a couple or in a relationship, or a single mother, single father, with children. But yeah, they said, or seniors, like that's fine. They said, but if you're PWD and you're just friends, or you have a roommate, they said it does not follow under their guideline, under their policy. And I said, that's not fair. They're like, unfortunately, that's how it's written right now. They said, obviously there's an issue that needs to be addressed. I said, so you're saying there's no guarantee? And the gentleman said to me, why do you keep using, Brent, the word guarantee? There's 0% chance that any PWD who are not under that guideline will not get in. So I find that the total discrimination. Even my landlord is a corporate manager, and she even said too that, like every PWD should have equal opportunity of having enough money to pay rent, and because that money would then go back into the economy, your local economy, and support small businesses and help them grow. And I said, well, that's what it's all about. And I said, how do we change this? We'll keep advocating, keep networking with them, and let them know like the system is broken and it needs to be changed. I mean, even the previous minister before Miss Malcolmson, Nick Simons, and Shane Simpson even agreed that there's something in the policy there that needs to be changed. And so I'm not sure how that would be done.
Well, your point of advocating, obviously that's, something that, you've done a great job. Both of you have done a great job. And, many others, I know there's the Day of Action, we've seen at the legislature a few times, those do help. They help kind of move that needle a little bit.
Yeah.
But, it goes back again, though, to, and I think you and I spoke about this, even within PWD payments, they penalize, couples, and there's, if two people want to get married, they're penalized for that, on payments and stuff. And it's like, my goodness, it's almost like, there's purposefully putting a thumb on you to keep you down. And we need to be, and it's, no different than what you were just saying. It seems to be, there's these little discriminatory pieces that are written into legislation that are not allowing people to step up and try and improve their life and try and lift themselves into something equitable that that we strive for. And we see it in many other ministries too, but certainly within the social development and poverty reduction ministry, the people ministries, right? Children and families, even, we see a lot of similar things where you've got this tug and pull. Well, we gave you money over here, so we need to take away money from over here. And, and it's like, well,
it's like a clawback from one area.
It is, absolutely. And, and speaking of clawback, I mean, we looked at the COVID supplement of $300 and
right.
Which was, I think really important for folks on PWD. And to even have, and I know they did give some back, but to have the audacity to take that back and say, okay, you're good now, COVID's done, you guys have money, and it's like, what? And there was a good example of advocacy, because you did have the entire province kind of rallying around this. And I know that, us in the official opposition and even others in the Green Party, we were, really standing up to support this because it was wrong. You can't give something and all of a sudden, take it away, because it's not like things are getting cheaper.
No.
Well, I remember when the NewsHour had interviewed Sonia and myself, just as an example, and other advocates, right on live TV, and we were living in Langley at the time, and the NewsHour said, what would happen if they took the supplement away? What would happen if they took the $300 away from you right now? What would happen? How would that change your life? Sonia actually said first, well, we would have to move. And I asked me, what would happen? I said, well, we would have to sacrifice a lot of things, cut back on nutritional food, other supplements. Just your quality of life would be, basically diminished. So, and sure, here we are. We're now in Victoria, beautiful British Columbia, which is great. I mean, it's nice, but it still doesn't feel like home. And we shouldn't have had to move, because I remember the government always saying people should always be able to be in the community and live in the community that they want to be in. And here we are, so again, the government had the opportunity of listening, but they didn't listen. They actually did the 360 and did the opposite. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to circle back. I said I was going to bring up the Schrödinger's cat thing.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to, again, I've tried 3 different human rights tribunals in about 11 years, and with the clawbacks that I'm having with my pension, and the response I always get is like, well, it's not discriminatory, it's only unfair. And so if we apply that to the housing problem, where they're basically only targeting, they're only allowing people that are paired up to say, well, you qualify for housing. We know what the percentages actually are, that it's around maybe 12% of all PWD qualify for subsidized housing or rents, right? So, and I've mentioned before too, that if you had McDonald's and they were only servicing 12% of the customer base, I mean, that's a spectacular failure, right? You can't say we're giving 12% housing, so job done, right? You can't say that, and so and another example I could give is like, when the Human Rights Tribunal says, well, it's not discriminatory, it's only unfair. Well, if you take my pension as an example, like say for example, I could be government for the day, just pretend that I could be government for the day, and I was going to say that I was going to claw back all pensions for all the MLAs. I'll just be a jerk and I'll claw back all of the pensions for all the MLAs, and I'll apply the same 12% rule. So, and I'll say that only the MLAs with that have a first or last name beginning with A, B, or C get pensions. All the rest don't get pensions, right? And so, like, I think you would be a little bit pissed off, Dan.
Yeah. Especially I just missed it by one letter.
You just missed it by that much, just by one letter, right? And I'm sure you wouldn't just say, well, it's not discriminatory, it's only unfair, because I'm deliberately targeting only the A to B to C, and I'm saying I'm throwing out all the rest. That's what they do, and so you can't say it's not discriminatory, because you're deliberately targeting. Like, all these things are deliberately targeting very specific. And so like the last complaint that I did to the tribunal is I made a point that all this stuff is very targeted. It's like all these micro discriminations that as you said, you use the word micro discriminations, and that's what it is. And to just finish my point about the Schrödinger's cat, if you expand that, basically what that is there was this physicist, I think it was in 1935, Erwin Schrödinger. He did a thought experiment. He said, well, if you put a cat in a box, you put a cat in the box and you put a vial of poison. You put a vial of poison in the box and you seal up the box. Okay, so you have a cat that's alive. Put him in the box with a vial of poison, and you say seal up the box. So as long as the box stays sealed, you don't know if the cat is alive or dead, right?
Right.
So the way the theory goes, or the way the thought process goes, is, well, because the cat's in the box, while the cat stays hidden in the box, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. It's alive and dead at the same time. And I just want to make the point that our our policies are kind of like, the disability policies are kind of like that, where they can say, well, like, for my pension, it's like a pension can be both an earned income and an unearned income, and because we don't have to acknowledge the truth of the dead cat in the box, because we're never going to open the box.
Right.
We're never going to open the box and see the truth. We're going to leave the cat in the box, and we're just going to ignore the truth.
Yeah.
Leave the cat in the box, and so the like I said, my pension is both unearned and earned, and both can be true at the exact same time. And I mean, that kind of logic is just so stupid. It's just so stupid, where, like, again, if you look at it like from a federal level, like back when I didn't know that this whole clawback thing existed, and I went to the federal government, I said, like, why is this provincial clawback a thing? And they said, well, just to let you know, the federal government's not clawing back your pension. Like, we're honoring it. It's the provincial government that's dishonoring it and disrespecting it, right? And again, so that goes back to my question of, like, so you have partly saying, well, we're going to honor it and respect it, and disrespect it at the same time. And so you got this dichotomy of, like, it's true and it's false both at the same time, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, I know. Yeah.
One hand gives and the other hand takes away.
And it just, like, I mean, we don't operate that like that in the society, where, like, if I say, are you married, Dan? It's like, yes, I'm married, or no, I'm not. It's not like, well, yeah, I'm both married and not married.
Yeah.
Or if I know you have two children. If I ask you if you have two children, you're like, well, I have two children and I also don't have children. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you either have it or you don't. You don't say, well, you can both have it and not have it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's like you can have market housing, or you can have subsidized housing. Take it or leave it. It's like the same thing. Or have a bus pass. Don't have a bus pass. It's the same thing. It's like the current government says, well, we don't know how to fix the dismantled computer system, right? It's the same thing. Like a small handful change the whole system. And it kind of goes with what you're mentioning, Neil. Like, it's like the whole aspect of a small little portion changes the whole system. And that really worries me about housing. I mean, so many comments lately on the news talking about housing, seniors losing housing, people on fixed income, people with disabilities. It was just on the news this morning. I was watching it again, and oh my gosh, they're going to be evicted. But apparently the minister says, well, I mean, sorry about that. I mean, I guess, we'll have to try to work with the situation. But those individuals in that housing, Dan, they don't have enough money to pay the high market rent. So I'm really worried that because the overload on not having enough subsidized housing built, where are these people going to go? I mean, like downtown Victoria on Pandora, it's just it's a complete gong show. Like, it's scary. Like, I won't even go down there. Like, my safety's at risk, so I won't go down there. And go figure, like, they're camped out in front of the ministry's office, Ministry of Social Development, Poverty Reduction office. They tents all the way
right there. Yeah.
I won't even go down there. Like, my safety is at risk, so I won't even go down that area. And I like to go grocery shopping, and I won't. I have to find another store to go to.
Yeah, well, and it's we see the same, of course. Hastings in Vancouver, very similar situation, You know, I know the government had tried to, you know, purchase a number of, you know, the different hotels and stuff, the you know, the subsidized housing or the supportive housing, but you know, it was a complete failure because it wasn't supported, and you know, a lot of the folks that are, and this is beyond PWD, but I mean, not everyone, because you know, some people, you know, are persons living with disabilities that are also street entrenched or you know, addiction challenges and such. But you know, when you've got and there are a number of these subsidized housing that are in Vancouver that are sitting empty.
Yes.
Because you know, the folks are told, well, here's a room. Just go there, and there's no supports for you, and there's people that are selling drugs or dealing drugs in these housing units. So people they feel safer out on the street than they do in the SROs that you know, that are out there. And it unfortunately, you know, I think the intent was good, but the delivery failed.
Yeah.
And I think we see that, unfortunately, a lot of different governments, you know, the intent might be there, but the delivery fails. And we need to start, I think, in many ways, you know, there's a lot of people that live and breathe the challenges. I mean, you know, both of you, that we should be looking toward and you know, sitting down with and finding out, okay, how can we best move forward to support in this situation persons with disabilities? How do we come up with a plan forward, whether that be on housing and BC housing? You know, you opened up Pandora's box there with BC housing. It's you know, it is a significant challenge. You know, even up here in Fort St. John, you know, it's certainly in my top 10 issues that I deal with. You know, challenges around BC housing, whether it's poor conditions. Again, you know, it's just poor people living in there, so we're not going to treat it nicely, and we hear a lot of that.
And again, this goes back to my point of, like, I'm an idealist, and I don't think it's a bad thing that government, every level of government, should strive for some sort of idealism. I don't think it's a bad thing to want that, right? And I just wanted to throw a quote about a Mark Twain quote that I found. Mark Twain said, "If you tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said." You know, and it's so it's just true. Like, and it's just like, you know, and it seems to me like there's so many policies where they're bending over backwards to pervert and basically lie and say, you know what, your survivor's pension is not a protected money. It's not a protected money. It should be, but it's not, because we're going to lie about it and pink unicorn it and have this dead cat in the box, you know, this Schrödinger's cat in the box, and we won't want to open the box because we don't want to reveal the truth of what the pension actually is.
Well, you know, way back in the 90s, Dan and Neil, BC disability income, it used to be a pension. One time, and it just disappeared. They got changed from pension into income of last resort, and I would like to see it basically back as a pension, because it's like seniors. I mean, they have a pension too, and so I'd like to see that happen. And I mean, it's just like for like housing, just like a standard, like it needs to be like a standard set across. And my fear is that because the rates are so suppressed, people are fearing that they have to be on their tippy toes. I was on the Mike Smith show on CKNW one morning, Dan, and they called in, talk about affordable housing, and I had the opportunity, and they got to know who I am. They're like, where are you come from? How you doing? I go, good. So you got 30 seconds, go. And I'm thinking, oh God, you know, testing me out, because like, okay, he does podcasts, he knows how to do it. So I crammed it in, but I got all the key points in. I said, a whole PWD check is not enough to even rent market housing. I said, we would love to move from where we are, but we fear that if we move, we put ourselves into a bad situation. And so the host of the show said, look, you guys need to stay where you are right now. Okay. I don't know when things are going to change, but you need to stay where you are because you put yourselves in a bad situation. Don't make your management mad. Don't tick them off. Yeah, it's just because the housing situation is so bad out there. And I mean, if we were to move out of this place right now, I'll just give you an example under this housing provider here. Right now, 1750, and that's minimum. It can go up as high as 2150 in the same building. Wow. So management would be happy if we moved out of here and say I want to move into another unit. It'd be $2,150.
Yeah, and then they rent yours out for that.
Yeah, and they would just change the lock. Oh, it looks good. You know, maybe buffered up a bit. Yeah, and so that's how bad it is, and that's the cheaper of a lot of the housing. Even there, a lot of them are even like $2,900. A whole 2 PWD checks wouldn't be enough to pay the rent alone. So that's crazy, and that's why I advocate so hard about making sure that PWD have equal access to like some kind of a like rent geared to income housing. But all those, it's just all those, like we mentioned earlier, it's all those little policies that are in place, that stipulations saying, well, you need to meet this criteria. If you don't, you can't have it. You know, so I'd like to see that changed, even for, I kind of extended into this part of the housing. I mentioned to Miss Malcolmson at one time on the podcast to have it extended over to the market housing. So the majority of PWD who live in market housing. However, that one stipulation needs to be changed, because otherwise it's going to be based on the household income, and also it'd be based on like say if it's just a roommate or a friend, it would still fall under the BC housing criteria. Then again, it actually harms the unfortunately harms the recipients, right? Yeah, I mean, because seniors have that happen too. I had that happen with my mom and my brother, where my mom actually had to kick one of us out. So I had to stay with her because it's like my brother was able to take care of himself independently. And sadly, it was income. It was income. The threshold of household income could not exceed. Well, my brother was a professional painter and he did construction, so his income was way higher. So one of us had to leave. And my mom said one time to a worker who was actually in charge of seniors pensions and PWD, and had said, well, unfortunately, that's just how the system is designed. And she says, well, how come he can't have the same as I do, rent geared income? Unfortunately, that's just how the system is. And so I always kept that in the back of my mind. That didn't make sense, right? So now here we are. We're now in a housing crisis, and I don't know. Like, I'd love to sit down and maybe one day we'll set up a meeting and just sit down and maybe kind of brainstorm ideas. And
yeah, we're at the end of the podcast now, Brent. It's gone. It went fast again, but
it does.
Yeah,
it always goes fast, Dan.
Yeah, well, and you know, just you know, I'll give you a couple of my final thoughts as well, and it you know, you talked about sitting down with you, and you know, Brent, I always have time for you and Neil and such, and even in my busy world. But
yeah,
you know, this is an election year, right? We have an election here in British Columbia coming up here in October, and I do encourage people. You know, we're just in the midst of developing, of course, platform and policy moving forward. You know, these conversations certainly help me as I bring forward ideas and such. And I do encourage you, if you do have some ideas, put them down on paper, send them my way, please.
Okay.
And sooner than later, of course, you know,
yes.
Like I say, we're 3 months away from that crazy time. But you know, I really think at the end of the day, and whatever it looks like past October 21st. You know, and if we are blessed with government, you know, one of my priorities that I'll be pushing is, you know, first and foremost is let's sit down with the people that this impacts. Let's have these conversations. Let's, you know, let's plot a course forward that is dignified, is you know, idealistic, and I do believe in ideals, and I think you know, us as the society that we're in, you know, we need to strive for that. And that's kind of where I am.
Absolutely. I totally echo that. Dan, it's coming with a standard, like a basic, like a standard that needs to be met, and how to get to that standard, like a goal of steps of how to achieve that goal of, rather than like, I mean, this is nothing against any particular government at all. It's like working together, coming with concrete plans, not like saying, well, it'd be great if we did this and that, but actually concrete plans of actually fixing the systems that are broken, and how do we work with it to actually bring it up to like a standard where we can actually work with that and then build on that standard. It's like getting the rates up to a livable income. Is it policies that are stopping it from happening? It's kind of working from there. It's always a great pleasure, Dan, having you on. I enjoy having our future discussions going forward, and definitely I appreciate all your advocacy, as well as you taking the time of coming on to the show here too. It's always wonderful having you on, and I mean, everyone should have a dignified living way of life, and not have to be in fear of worried about losing their housing and not be able to have enough income to support their standard of living. Having the housing, having your resources met. I mean, is it income inequality? Is it marriage? Stipulation of why they can't have housing? You have to meet all these goals, all these not goals, but guidelines.
Guidelines.
It's just all the red tape that's involved. And
well, and it's not even easy to to manage through all the policy and legislation, right? It's very difficult. And there's another talk about these blocks that you have to, these hurdles that you constantly have to go over, right?
Well, that's when I talked to BC Housing, I was just flabbergasted. I'm like, this makes no sense to me. I said, people, sir, and I know before we quickly ended here, all I said was, sir, people just want to have a roof over their head and dignified life.
Yeah.
Right, but they have to meet the guidelines. I go, okay, we need to cut the red tape. We need to cut this red tape because it's hurting people. I look forward to having our future discussions. We will definitely. It's going to be interesting on how the election goes on October 19th of this year.
I do think the NDP is going to take a serious hit, though. I really do.
Yeah, I think they will too. But of course, just and I do got to run here.
Yeah.
It will be a very interesting election to watch, just because, of course, you have the John Rustad's party. They're kind of doing his thing, which. But they're a little far right, I think, for most British Columbians, and I think when we see policy announcements come out, people will start seeing that, and that's why I encourage people look at the policies.
Well, I worry about the cutbacks, right? Because he hasn't said anything about that, and I worry about cutbacks for PWD.
Yeah. Well, and I look at results do matter.
Yes.
And I think we need to be looking at results.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Dan, for coming on. And
my pleasure.
You'll go on very soon. We'll
pleasure.
touch base. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your advocacy as well. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.